Please tell me if I'm crazy, but if I am, please let me know. But isn't Victor Von Doom's look kind of like a Bicentennial Man thing? You know the Robin Williams movie? For some reason, I got a major Bicentennial Man vibe. I don't know what it is. But if you want to find out what's wrong with the movie, and even worse in this film, then stay tuned. Here's my review of the fantastic... What is up, ladies and gentlemen, YouTube? Today we're going to be talking about the Fantastic Four. You're probably thinking, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you reviewing this movie? Why are you even watching this movie? Why are you wasting your time with this movie? Well, I'll tell you right now, I had to waste my time with this movie. Not because I had time to waste, but personally because I'm going to be making a worst list of 2015. I had to catch up on some movies, so therefore, why not catch up on one of the worst movies of 2015? Now, granted, this is a very odd movie, right? Because I'm just going to kind of get that out the way. This movie, while watching it, I was like, it's not that bad. I know, you're going to be like, what? It's not that bad. But at the core, it's just like on the surface. You're just watching, and you're not thinking about this movie. You'd be like, okay, well, it's not that bad. It's like, yes, this thing is not really anything. But for some reason, you'd be like, yeah, it's not that bad. Maybe because I didn't pay for it. So, maybe that's also one reason why. But then, let's talk about this thing right here. Because this thing is bad. And it's got a lot of problems. And it's an embarrassment to everyone involved. Yeah. So let's talk about this here right now. And this is going to be spoilers if you give a shit. So ready in 3 and 2 and 1. So this is pretty much the reboot of Fantastic Four after the non-good version of the 2005 and 2007. But you'll be looking at that one in a new light after watching this film. So therefore it's about 4 scientists, or if you want to really call it scientists, some of them aren't even scientists. You know, it's about 2/5 of the group. Ben Grimm, not a scientist. Reed Richards is a scientist, I guess. Dr. Doom, not a scientist per se, but he's a hacker, and he apparently works well in this group, which doesn't really make any sense. Johnny Storm, he's a hotshot, hothead that can fix cars up, not a scientist. And then you got, if I didn't say Sue Storm, whatever, but I don't even know who left. So yes, while watching this movie, I was just like, okay, so there's a couple of things wrong with this film. One, so they hire a guy named Reed Richards. This is going to just be, not a rant, but just what I don't like. So pretty much, Reed Richards is we kick off this thing where it's like, okay, Reed and his buddy Ben, they're young, and then they kind of, blowing up their parents' basement or whatever. And then you kind of see it just be like, okay, first of all, those kids look nothing like Jamie Bell and Miles Teller. And then that's just like the least of their problems. And I know going into this movie, people were just like, well, Black Johnny Storm, first of all, I'm just going to say this right now. The least of this film's problems is Black Johnny Storm. Quite frankly, it didn't even bug me because Michael B. Jordan did a good enough job, I guess. If you want to say good in this movie, then sure. I don't know what that would really be, but sure, if you want to say good, then that's your opinion. And everybody has one. You're just wrong in this one, but yes. I would say this, right? And then when you see him in the college fair or whatever the science fair, they never really elaborate how old these guys are. For one, it doesn't make any sense really, because if they're in high school, one, Jamie Bell looks way too old, and so does Miles Teller, and then you see Sue Storm popping in out of nowhere, and you're just like, okay, so they're all in high school because he said he's getting a scholarship, so he just kind of like found him out of nowhere, but then. Franklin Storm, the Storm's father, he's like, hey, come on, son, come on in and work for me. We're going to give you full scholarship. And I was just like, wait a minute. Like, maybe it's just me, and I didn't see this clearly. But for me, personally, it was just like, what? So he failed at his science fair project, right? But for some reason, he's good enough to be working at your place. That doesn't make any sense, and that's just the tip of the iceberg with this movie, unfortunately. Then, what else happens? I forgot. A couple of things that don't really make sense. Then we see, Von Doom, right? People say he's going to be a hacker. He is a hacker. They changed it to Victor Von Doom. The cringe-worthy inducing when Kate Mara actually said, oh, Dr. Doom over here. I was just like, oh, God, that's even nastier than your hair color. For one, while watching this movie, it was a very not hard thing to do, because I also saw Hot Pursuit yesterday because that was a double feature last night. Hot Pursuit and Fantastic Four. Let's start getting out the popcorn. So while this is going on, you kind of be like, well, that's not Dr. Doom. That's some basement dweller, fucking homeless man that is playing Doctor Doom. You know, for me, particularly, what didn't work in this movie because it's like they tried to make this thing so different to the point where it wasn't even a different take on the Fantastic Four. It just wasn't the Fantastic Four. This movie was an embarrassment for everybody involved, pretty much. Now, you heard the things like, okay, well, this is directed by Josh Trank, right? And this is my problem with this movie particularly. If people's just like, well, Josh Trank is a great director, you know, he's going to do a good job in this. First of all, no, he's not. Josh Trank did one movie. And if he did another movie, nobody talked about it. They talked about Chronicle, and that's great. And this is pretty much what this feels like. Fantastic Four meeting Chronicle in the same world. And unfortunately, this doesn't work. And then also the conversations between some of the cast members, where it's just like, you know, when Reed and like Stu specifically are talking, it's just like, hey Reed, hey Stu, what's up? Nothing much. It's literally like awkward pauses to the point where it's just like, wait a minute, do these guys even like each other, or is there anything involved? And then Dr. Doom over here is like having, you know, problems with Reed because he's starting to like Stu. I'm just like, first of all, Doom, I don't think you got to worry about them liking each other because there's no chemistry between Sue Storm and Reed Richards. Michael B. Jordan, this is where some things really start to take a tumble down, was because he's a hotshot, right? And he's doing all these things. He likes car drag racing and whatnot. He crashes his car. Then his father comes and picks him up. He says, you know what, son? You want the car back? You have to come work for me. Then he brings him in to give back the car. He has to work on a mission. And then he gets, you know, work in the station. Be like, wait a minute. I feel like you brought this on yourself. And not only that, but all of them are dumb, right? Once they kind of come up with the teleportation thing, they eventually, you know, all come up with it. But the NASA and all, you know, the Army and whatnot, they say, all right, we're going to be the first to test it out. And then they start to get cocky, and their egos start to drive them shits, especially Michael B. Jordan, just be like, okay. It was like, fuck that. We're going to do it ourselves without anybody's supervision, without Stu's supervision. And then we're just going to go and do this shit on our own. For me, that doesn't... what? So you are that big of an egomaniac that you're willing to risk your lives without any actual proper planning, and then you're going to go out there. And not only that, but to bring it on the front, we're bringing a mechanic, Johnny Storm, and then Reed Richards, because he's drunk. And literally, if you heard the story about Miles Teller being drunk on set, I believe that was true. Those scenes where he's drunk in the movie, I believe those were not in the script. He just improvising. He just drinking it up. And, you know, it was hysterical to see it. Because once that happened, he calls Ben Grimm, and Ben Grimm ain't doing shit in this movie, really. And then he just comes to, hey, you want to go to space? And I'm in space. You want to go to another goddamn dimension? Sure. What the fuck do I gotta do? I'm laying down. I ain't doing nothing. And then what happens? Reed is really the biggest problem of everyone. Really, you know, this guy's one giant fuck up. He's the reason why Ben is always hard. You know, that's the reason why. You know, he's that big of a fuck up. And then once they get back, you know, Doom falls into an acid trip or whatever the hell you want to call it, and it starts to kind of feel like a horror movie of sorts during that part. And it does kind of feel like, okay, maybe there's something here. But then when everybody gets their powers and whatnot, you know, that kind of is like the creepiest part in all that. But one, the special effects suck in this movie. The thing looks like shit, literally. And then, you know, Reed stretching ability when he's like moving his face, that was just like hysterically bad. For some reason, when she got her powers, she has the ability, Sue Storm, she has the ability to pretty much change her hair color in a blink of an eye, apparently. Like I said, there's a lot of things wrong with this movie. For one, why would you want to send, like I said, a mechanic and then someone who has no scientific expertise, Ben Grimm, to another dimension with you to travel and do something that does not even fit their criteria? But for some reason, they do it because it makes sense. There's something that teleported in this movie. That's for damn sure. And it's the script. The script teleported out somewhere. I don't know where, but specifically it just like popped out because there's not anything interesting here. And then once they kind of come back from that dimension, they come back to Earth, then they're being discovered by the government and whatnot. And then, you know, Reed leaves. Then we fast forward a year later. You know, you see all their powers are kind of just like going out of control. And then fast forward a year later, boom, that's where the movie pretty much takes the dive right there. It was slightly holding up, even though it was falling down, but it was slightly holding up, and then, ooh, it just falls completely. Because fast forwarding a year later and not letting us actually see how they actually got their powers was bad. And then you forward a year later, and they're still trying to work out their powers. So it's like, how do you waste an hour to that. When they're trying to do their powers almost a year later, you would think that's like in the first like 20 minutes, like in the 05 version. They didn't waste time and they got to the point. Say what you want about those movies, but they got to the fucking point. And to me, I actually don't mind those movies. And this movie makes those films look like, you know, the grand mass of all superhero movies. Not only that, but there's nothing, you know, action-packed in this thing. Now, I didn't find this particularly boring, but if you thought Superman Returns had no action, Superman Returns is a Man of Steel or the Raid Redemption compared to Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four, I can tell you the action scenes right here, right now. Ben Grimm pulls off a tank. The final battle, which is not really that much of an action scene. Thanks, Trank. Good job. Anyways, let's talk about the performances. I'm drunk now. Let's talk about the performances right here. Miles Teller, terribly miscast, and so is everybody else pretty much in this movie. Though I actually did kind of like Ben Grimm and Johnny Storm, but I did not like Von Doom or Von Dweller, whatever you want to call the guy, Victor Von Zuckerberg. So the way I see it is, yes, is this movie terrible? And then they find Reed once he's taken hostage. Ben and everybody, they kind of work for the government. Then they get Reed back to build the next teleportation thing, which is weird because they was telling they need Reed to build the next teleportation thing, but they clearly say to Ben that you know, the dude from the Incredible Hulk, he says we have the best resources and technology out there. We can find you a cure. Be like, well, if we have the cure and the technology, how the hell you can't build the teleportation thing without Reed Richards? You need Reed Richards to bring him in and then build a teleportation thing so you can fix all the shit. But for some reason, you say you have the best technology and resources. Apparently, you don't because you needed a fucking Reed Richards. But yes, apparently that was the whole case. Now, then you fast forward, they build a teleportation thing, they bring back Doom, and then we got like 15 minutes left. Doom goes crazy, he's evaporating everyone, but then when he sees Fantastic Four, if you want to call him that, then he doesn't evaporate them. They killed the Fowler, which I was just like, that's the best part of this movie. He's the most interesting character. He doesn't evaporate the Fantastic Four, which is like, why? You killed everybody else here. Why not kill 4 of them? You know, it doesn't make any sense. Then they go to the dimension and say, hey, Miles Teller, his acting, I think, is the worst out of everyone in this thing. He's just like, well, maybe we can't beat him, but we can stop him together. Okay, so they battle him in a very lackluster battle, and then the battle's like 4 minutes, I believe, and it's just like meshed together, and then they just like, fuck it. Doom's done. We killed him. Let's go back to Earth. Because at first I was like, wait a minute. If they're flying back, like, don't they need the teleportation thing to get there to begin with? That doesn't really make any sense. But I guess Doom opened the portal or something. And then it's just like, wait a minute. There's too many things going on here. Nothing is making any sense. It's like they was just like, well, we have to build all this up to nothing. You know, it's like you're walking through a hallway and you need to find your way out. And you see a light at the end of the tunnel, but you realize that light at the end of the tunnel is nothing more than a match to a dead end. So it's like you did all that walking just to get a match. And it's still a dead end. You know, there was nothing there. You walked. And at the end of the line of this movie, you got nothing. It ends, and then, you know, they do some shitty thing like the Avengers Age of Ultron where it's just like, hey, it's 4 of us. You know, what should we call it? You're like, I don't know. And then Reed says, you know, it's pretty better than the Garage, huh? And Ben Grimm says, yeah, it's pretty fantastic. And I'm just like, oh, you done fucked it up, people. What? And then it just says, I know what we call, and then it ends. That's the Fantastic Four. That is a fantastic movie. They did a great job on this entire film. I mean, like, this is really fantastic. Everybody did a fantastic job. But pretty much everything just comes down to whoever is to blame. I'm not going to blame the cast, but I will blame Miles Teller because he clearly was just phoning it in. But that's my opinion. Comment, subscribe, like. That's my review. Fantastic Four is terrible. Don't ever see it again. But if you want to see it for free, go ahead, download that shit. It's not that bad, I guess. But sure. Comment, subscribe, like. Help me get to 60 before the new year, and I'll give you a shout out. There you go.